So the history of the Teochews in Hougang really antedates the arrival of Raffles.
So then, of course, there were pig farms around this area. And, certain days or nights when the wind blows the wrong direction, you'll be able to smell the pig farm.
If you're a farmer who has tended that land and has been custodian for that land, defines who you are, to suddenly have it taken away by a state that is out there somewhere, not part of your daily lives, and then forced into relocation into a new house, a new flat, that creates big problems of trust. And I think that is the start of what happens.
When you have these policies from the government that say, emphasize less the dialects and emphasize more the mother tongue, which is Chinese, then you start to see this downplaying of the Teochew identity.
And then comes Mr. Lau speaking the rally in Teochew. It's just like, wow, it almost feels rebellious in a way,
When I was elected, they decided to discontinue. When the time comes, I will left with no office, no staff to manage the town.
Shutting down the market was a very emotional moment for me because the market is my lifeline. I love food,
The old market there was actually a gathering point for many people who live around in Hougang area.
So far, I don't know how many hawker center or market have they taken away from old estate. I mean, you look at Red Hill, the market is still there. Look at Henderson, still there. Chin Swee Road, still there. What's so different about Hougang?
Singaporeans can't be so easily bought off by bribing us about lift upgrading or by throwing this goodie or throwing that goodie. There are other things like democratic values or discourse or debate or just wanting alternative opinions and views that we actually care about.
You will learn that there is a lot of warmth in the Hougang people who have been living here for a long time. They call it the Hougang spirit. Actually, it's that kampong spirit that came with them when they were resettled in Hougang.
I guess Hougang, you want to win Hougang, you must win with your heart, not with your mind, not with goodies, not with promise of upgrading. You must win with your heart.
So the Hougang spirit is produced by shared memory, shared experiences, and shared heritage coming out of a people within a specific historical context at a specific geographical location.
I remember where the Punggol Park is actually a shipyard. They repair the bumboats there. So it's a bit of a low-lying land where when the tide is high, you actually flood over the road.
During my times living here, everybody know each other, more like the what you call the kampong spirit of the old days, and we will leave our door open.
So sometimes even when you go down the lift or you go down to the void deck, you meet certain neighbors or uncle, aunties, and you just walk past them and say, hey, then they'll just say hi to you, and they are by the side of the garden drinking tea or whatever. So to me, it's a very nice, warm place.
Hougang was not like what it is today. It was not so built up. There were a lot of low-rise buildings. There were shop houses. There were attap houses around. The thing about now and then is that today in Hougang, you don't realize that we're actually quite near the sea. But the name Hougang means a harbour in the back, right? So we were near the sea. And now you don't feel it at all. You just feel like you're in any HDB estate. I remember cycling past the cathedral, and then you will see the sea. You will hear the lapping of the waves.
So the history of the Teochews in Hougang really antedates the arrival of Raffles, because from even the middle of the 18th century, there were a lot of Chinese migrants from China, the Guangzhou province where Shantou and all these places are, they were actually coming out of China to better their lives, to seek their fortunes. In Teochew, they call it Gui Heng, to look for better futures in the Nanyang region. So many of the Teochews in Singapore actually came from the Riau Islands, some from there through Pulau Ubin. And so from Pulau Ubin, if you come into Singapore, it will be the Serangoon River. So I think when Raffles came, there were really a lot of gambia plantations. So a lot of these early Teochews, they were actually invested in the planting and farming of gambia. And even along Upper Serangoon, the area that will later be known as Hougang, there were already these plantations there. That's why kind of like in 1827, when they started to build these long roads, right, from Singapore town at the south, where Harbourfront and the CBD is today, they built these big roads to reach to the different parts of Singapore. And one of them was Serangoon Road, and later broken into Upper Serangoon and Serangoon Road. So for Upper Serangoon Road, it ends at where Hougang is today. And the road ending there means to say that there are people there. There's a purpose to go there and to be there. And from what I see, it is to link the front harbour of Singapore, which is Harbourfront, to the back harbour, which is exactly what Hougang is. So it actually brings Pulau Ubin and all the plantations there in connection with Singapore town, where the centre of trade actually was.
So Hougang used to be from here onwards, what I would say Hougang, okay? So now it's been divided into maybe a little bit of Serangoon, Hougang, Sengkang, and Punggol. I think from my recollection, Hougang is like, you know, when I was young, you know, people ask, where do you stay? From what I can recall is Hougang Sakotio onwards. So it starts from Potong Pasir. You know, in those days it's called Swati. Swati is Hougang Sakotio. Then you come to the Hougang Sikotio. Sikotio is actually the Chinese grave. And then further up, it's where we are now, Lim Tua Tau, is Hougang Ngokotio, is the marketplace. Okay, so as you proceed, so it's actually all along Upper Serangoon Road until Hougang Ngokotio and Hougang Lakotio, which is Kovan right now. And then after you go to Hougang Sikotio is actually where Montfort School. Then after that, you turn into Hougang Avenue 8, which is actually part of the original Punggol Road. So as you enter into Punggol Road, Sikotio is Riverview Plaza right now. As you move further on, you'll be St. Anne's Church is Hougang Gaokotio. Then after the TPE, you will go to Hougang Zakotio Samki. There is this temple called Samki Pekong. So that is where it's Zakotio. And then after the Samki, then you had that Heritage Road all the way to Punggol Bay, where we have seafood.
So people tend to use these milestones as markers of place when they remember. But because of urbanization and because of development and modernity in Singapore, these markers were actually removed.
So then, of course, there were pig farms around this area. And, you know, certain days or nights when the wind blows the wrong direction, you'll be able to smell the pig farm.
Actually, I grew up at the part of Hougang, not the Hougang constituency. I grew up at former Siko, they call Siko. During that time, the area that after 6 months is still a lot of farming, Punggol whole farming area, plantation and all that. That was during the time when I grew up in Hougang. My father was a fishmonger, so he sell fish somewhere, Hougang area, some of the small lane, and I did help him before selling fish, so I know a bit of fish.
My granny used to sell fish at the market. So Sunday morning, I will follow my granny to the fishery there to see how they conduct the breeding on the fish. Last time fish come out, one tray, they put on the floor, then they start breeding. After that breeding, we'll go to the market to sell on the roadside. Last time, a lot of illegal selling on the roadside to earn yourself pocket money. That's all. But life is like that.
So most of the people who came from Swatao were farmer fishermen. So they were either working on plantations or farming livestock, or they were fishing. And this legacy of fishermen, right? This idea of 河壁之乡, they call it so 鱼米之乡, right? Where it's about fish and about rice in that sense. So fishermen and farmers. This legacy kind of percolated till even the 1980s, where I think there was a Straits Times article talking about Hougang that said, an Hougang person could tell if a fish was fresh in one look. Because there were so many changes that happened before my time. For example, the fishery was no longer around when I was born. There was a zoo that was somewhere in the vicinity that was also removed and closed down and stuff like that. So there were all these different anecdotes that I couldn't imagine Hougang to be, because the Hougang I know is so different from what my parents' generation, my grandparents' generation knew and loved Hougang to be, and how Singapore has emerged from this sleeping fisherman village into this modern cosmopolitan metropolis today. And people tend to just see point A and point B. They don't see the journey that goes alongside it. So I think it is that journey that actually matters, because that's how you're negotiating and you're rebuilding and re-identifying one another. So in the 1970s, as part of this urbanization of Singapore, the kampongs had to go, HDB flats were coming up. So the government started to acquire land in all these rural areas, these heartland areas. And I think in 1976, the government actually acquired quite a bit of land in Hougang. The mission land that was sold to the church was taken back. And so the church land kind of grew smaller and smaller, and all these kampongs were cleared out and people had to be moved into HDBs.
I think essentially what we saw from the 1970s onwards in Singapore was this phase of really rapid growth and urbanization. And in a way, Singapore was a very key participant of this US-led global capitalist order that benefited the whole of East Asia, actually, economically. Singaporeans, whether they wanted to or not, bought into this social compact of we give up our civil liberties and we trade in our freedoms in exchange for economic growth and political stability.
We had such ambitious plans of moving Singapore forward. And of course, the act-up houses, there were risks of fire, and sanitation was an issue. And it was part and parcel of rehoming people into high-rise buildings. And I think that was part and parcel of the Singapore narrative. I can imagine anybody who's being relocated will probably not be very pleased, with the area that they lived in. But I guess that's part and parcel of urbanization, yeah.
Because you are now taken out of this environment, taken out of all these places that you know and that you love, and thrown into this artificially made box that you have no emotions and no attachment towards. So for some of these interviewees I had, they struggled. They tried very hard to actually get places in Hougang. And later on, if they could, they moved back.
That's really in the mid-70s. We were being informed that we need to relocate. I was pretty young, I think probably 6, 7 years old. So land acquisition exercise, so everybody had to move, and they allocated the flats predominantly around this Hougang area. Some went to Ang Mo Kio. Most of our relatives are actually in Lorong Lew Lian area. We just have to pack our bags and leave. Very sad. I mean, we used to be able to roam around. I remember when I was young, school holidays, we will just cut down the coconut trees, the leaves, and then make tents, and then we'll all camp out there. Yeah, but you know, we had to leave all this behind. So these are so-called childhood memories. Very sad, but I guess you know it's a necessary part of Singapore development.
As part of this effort to join these globalized supply chains, there was an instinct that we had to standardize how we control race and language, right? So we need to create this ideal Singaporean who can easily plug into the multinational corporation. And so English and Mandarin essentially were prioritized as the languages that this country would speak. So by emphasizing English and Mandarin, in a way, it was a pragmatic approach to economic development, but that also led to a loss of language, culture, identity, history, belonging, and in particular, it led to sort of breakages in the linkages within families. You know, again, it's a pragmatic approach, but what that meant in terms of our loss of identity is that each group basically got bucketed into a particular category, and we then got homogenized in those categories.
And an English-educated elite has always been a unifying force within Singapore and Malaysia, one of the later manifestations of an Anglophone bourgeoisie that comes together across ethnicity, is working in similar sectors as lawyers, as doctors, as teachers, and is creating this idea initially of a Malayan identity. And it's just almost like making the rest of Singapore like that.
But when you have these policies from the government that say, you know, emphasize less the dialects and emphasize more the mother tongue, which is Chinese, then you start to see this downplaying of the Teochew identity within the schools itself. And then you start to see this erosion of this Teochew enclave that is Hougang, right? Because you realize now I'm saying Hougang instead of Hougang. That was exactly what happened. Hougang became renamed to Hougang, which is not, when you translate it to English, is Hougang. So you have all these loss of, I would say loss of identities even, as they started to emphasize something that could bring Singaporeans together, right? So it's not just your different dialect groups, but speaking Chinese and talking across dialect groups rather than these clans that sometimes tend to be more exclusive. So you see this exclusion that is to Hougang kind of slowly breaking away as well.
I think there's quite a strong sense of community in Hougang, and it's that common language as well, the dialect, right? Everyone speaks Teochew. This Teochew spirit is quite different from any other dialect group, and to be able to say things in Teochew, this has a special connection that you can't reach otherwise. You know, I remember it was like 少说方言多讲华语, and then the Teochew people were saying 多讲抓己, you know, which is talk about money. Let's talk about money, and they'll take things and do a little humorous spin to it, you know, in dialect, and yeah, and that was lost. And I think again, any change is going to meet with resistance, and of course, people are unhappy.
Here you're talking about a region that, first of all, has a very strong dialect identity. Teochew has a very strong Catholic Teochew presence, is a rural area, is a very much centered around pig farming, fishing. People have a connection with place, with land. And it becomes relatively late, actually, in the master plan. I think it's from the 80s on that it goes through that massive resettlement and that building of new estates. And it's very, very disruptive.
除了大选，我们什么时候有这个机会站在这边向大家讲话？
If you compare Singapore in the 1950s to the 1980s, the 1950s, you had this environment of sort of a bustling, nascent democracy. There were these anti-colonial movements. There were lots of newspapers and labor unions and lots of debate and discourse around a whole bunch of things. There seemed to be a lot of optimism in a new Singapore. And by the time you get to the 1980s, 1990s, a lot of that has completely reversed. It's gone.
I mean, the government had covered Hougang SMC in a way that is so small at that time, you see. And people that staying in Hougang itself don't even get a chance to vote in Hougang SMC.
The real Hougang is very big. But if you are talking about Hougang SMC, it is quite a large estate actually to me, because it stretches all the way to last time what we call Kangkar East, and stretches all the way to Difu Lane area, and it was bounded by Avenue 3 and by the Serangoon River. We call it the Longkang last time. Yeah, not a super busy area. It's a quiet town by the side. Yeah, but it's quite a huge town by itself, I think so.
When it came to 1991 general election, I told JBJ that I want to go to the SMC. So he agreed. Actually, my first choice was Changi constituency, Changi SMC. I knew a bit of the background there and also the problems over there. But my then party chairman wanted to go to Changi because he stayed nearer to the constituency. So I said, okay, if that's the case, since the party chairman wants to go, then I look for another SMC. Then I look around, then, okay, I think the Workers' Party participated in Hougang constituency in, I think, 88 election. The result, okay, I think it's just like a normal opposition. What is the percentage you get? So I decided, and okay, Pat, let's go to Hougang SMC. That's how it started.
Part of the PAP plan for taking Singapore into the future is, like Hong Kong does as well, to take over all the land, to make it an act of the state, that the land ultimately belongs to the state. This is a very difficult thing to face if you're a farmer who has tended that land and has been custodian for that land, defines who you are, to suddenly have it taken away by a state that is out there somewhere, not part of your daily lives, and then forced into relocation into a new house, a new flat. You may enjoy the solidity, you may enjoy the kind of new security, you may enjoy the lifts, but at some point you've had your whole kind of way of being turned away, and that creates big problems of trust. And I think that is the start of what happens.
The issue then was more of cost of living. Things are going up, and these people they are displaced because of the change of the new lifestyle. Some of them become hawkers, some become shops, selling something, and that because of the cost of living that going up, that's put a lot of pressure on them.
但是后間人看到咱人的時陣，伊也非常的了解。但是咱人除咗後港出行開軍長大會頭一年的時陣，伊福建話、潮州話向在地居民老的一派老的用福建話、潮州話詳細講經過大選的情形，互伊人聽。迄陣，所以我人就講你免驚，你若是到艱難黨至少本有幾啊千票佇兜，伊將幾啊千票的人攏總家掠去啦。有才了無，伊就唔敢安尼做的嘛，對無？所以我攏掠去，佢後港嘛反贏起來。所以伊個老的人聽了會入心，會了解。
後港區係選民，各位支持者，
And then comes Mr. Lau speaking the rally in Teochew. It's just like, wow, like it almost feels rebellious in a way, and I think it resonated with everyone. Like I said, Teochew is a special language. So adding that background and then adding Teochew, if it was Hokkien, it might not have the same effect, somehow. And then that just sort of created this perfect storm, so to speak.
Mr. Low kind of came in and said all these things. People resonated and responded to it because that was the reality, that was the truth that he was speaking, and they could understand it from the way he reached out to them as well. People could identify with them because they were Hougang Nang, Teochew Nang. They could see themselves in him, and so in that sense, he championed their beliefs and their views because he came from there. He was Kaki Nang basically, and you would trust your own people to look after your own interests more than others.
我到334这到投票站，这到投票站的时阵，这到的人选民啊，看到我，甲拍招呼，才入去投票。投了出来，笑笑头甲拄着转去。我就真看我真欢喜，真感谢这到的人了。落来。 Low Thia Khiang lại, 我就找Low Thia Khiang講，我正聽喺度嘅情形，安喺度嘅選民，安尼看情形。Low Thia Khiang講好，咱兩個來去聲音學堂，聲音小學，聲音小學嘅時陣啊，我咱去徛班嗰度，迄幾人，Low Thia Khiang講，迄度嘅票上多啦，迄度人哋來投票嘅時陣啊，看到我人走嚟教我人看手。 手看了，就入去投，投了出來，甲拍警察頭轉。咱就先即款嘅表現，咱看到落迄度，到 BAP 當完成就看到整個情形，來到徛，伊個人莫看嘅。所以當完成無變，走嚟徛翻我人面頭前，我人徛後邊，伊徛我人頭前，伊個人徛嘅身邊挖過來，甲我人拍招呼，莫甲拍招呼。 所以喺啲投票到下晡嘅時陣嚇，啲 BAP 承認伊家己輸了。
But when I knew I won, I know that there are a lot of challenges in front, and I have to prepare for it. So, while of course, I felt, happy and really thankful for the support in Hougang. It's not much of excitement to me because I know what is it that's waiting for me. From the way I understand how the BAP operates.
So this was mid-1980s to early 1990s. So what was interesting to me is that every day when I moved from the Balestier area to Potong Pasir, it was very clear to me that the feel on the ground was just completely different from everywhere else in Singapore. And of course, I was much younger then. So, how did I interpret it? I interpreted it as like, oh, maybe it's not so good to be an opposition ward, right? They must have done something wrong here. The voters voted wrongly. And without really processing that it was all part of this very unfair system that Singapore had in place. It's less so today, but there's still a bit of it. But this very unfair system where opposition voters would get penalized, and it's part of the whole sort of structure to discourage people from voting opposition and to entrench the power of the ruling party.
But I'm elected, I'm responsible for the estate. I don't really care whether I'm welcome or not. Then it comes to the bombshell later that the managing agent say, well, I'm not going to manage anymore for you. When the time comes, they want to terminate the managing contract. Then the next bombshell, I say, then my office how? And then the HDB commercial property, I think the time when I was going down, the property, the person in charge, I think waited for me there. Served me notice to quit. So, when the time comes, I was left with no office, no staff to manage the town. So I told them, I said, I don't care. I'm not going to move out the office. I said, when the time comes, you throw out all the things. I said, I will call a press conference and I'll let Singaporean and Hougang voter to see what you are doing. I got very angry. I banged the table. I said, I'm not going to move. And what do you want? So at the end, I said, oh, if that's okay, then you build yourself. Challenge me to build town council office. Then they give me the budget. They give me take a look, and I think it's possible to build. Then the next time we had the meeting, this time now I packed with someone to go and take minutes because I was alone. Not take minutes. At the end of the day, it's what you. So we take minutes and all that, and then you agree on certain, on certain budget and all that. Then proceeded from there. And yes, I managed to build the town council office within the time frame. It was an interesting moment because at the time, when at the deadline, HDB was there. I hand over the key to the HDB commercial department for the completion of the office. And then they hand over to me for the commencement of the rental of the office. So that's how it started with that, and then it started moving things. And of course, simultaneously, I looked for staff. And for that about 2 to 3 months, I lost 10 kg. Okay, I think I was young, so okay, I survived that. The period, because the stress is terrible because you have to, first of all, meet the time frame. Secondly, you have to make sure that the operation is all right, recruiting staff, make sure that you know how to operate. So the stress level, the pressure is really very high.
How's the big way here? Big way here. Big way here.
83
83啊。安怎伊叫你落去到下就？
伊就是因为迄阵咱人技术人员无够，无够这经验。伊是刘成强，伊是了解我，有教我做定过了后，什么都我有做的嘛。 一卡踏就对啦。
一卡踏到了。
做物件一卡踏啦，我无惊，我爱说做尽量做安尼款呢。
把伊新 office 做的时阵，你就除了啦，对，咱去的时阵。
迄站伊坦白讲啊，伊个是，迄个是刘振强厉害啦。伊安怎伊会了解到，当今啊，伊要赶即场工课。本来啊是6个月啊，袂好诶。伊个叫伊个 contractor 拢总啊，派三班人落来，电的一班土水，一班那个一班什么的拢总落去拼去了完成。所以啊，伊就这3个外个4个月啊就完成了。这是个并有把握啦。
伊叫你落去到骹就做什么工？叫你做什么工？叫你落去，你讲一卡踏啦，拢总做完了，修理物件。
人 complain 物件，叫我就去拄拍头电就对啦。
电费派啦，
电费派。
也是叫了啦。
拢总啦，真侪物件啦。
水塔啦，款拢叫啦。涂骹啦。
草诶，有铁条啦，拢总啦，伊是湿泥呢。
湿泥做迄物叫落落
啊，咱本做。
你本做啦。
因为啊，千里千回啊，拼做哇，大家。看见啊，你看哇，真啊，真咧搞，佢出来去做。
早时吼，你伫头壳做讲是有算点钟几点到几点的无？敢若伊是8点到5点，到是。
到5点，有阵我到7点啊、8点啊会转啊。
做到暗暝啦。
会。
你半暝有够转来无？有时敲电话叫你会转来，你无转来？
半暝2点啊、3点啊，敲电来我嘛是甲到了。伊迄阵啊，佫是咱就上班了哦，落来啊，是去处理即个工作的问题啊，就比较淡薄较头疼安怎呢？问题就是讲，因为因人即多数的人啊，多数是因人迄边的人。
迄阵啊，早时
开始啊，迄边的人。所以呢，刘振强伊就跟我交代，伊讲咱人啊，伫后港区一视同仁，唔爱去分什么人。即区的人民，就是咱人需要过。
作为人民服务就对啦，无管你什么党啊，吼，咱为后港的人民服务就对啦。
服务咱就认为讲。有影诶物件，无影，阮不要紧啦。你你 complain 来到就，阮来记录去，举这 complain 出去找咯，找袂着，找个着。
I believe there are people who are supportive, and there are people who don't. They are supportive of the PAP. But my principle is, I'm an elected MP. Whether you are supporting PAP or you're supporting WP, you are my constituents. I will serve you. And I make it plain clearly at my MPS, because some of them, they come and tell me, yeah, I'm your supporter. I say, thank you very much, but I think whether you're a supporter, I will continue to serve you. And there are people who tell me, this guy, PAP supporter. But I say, it doesn't matter. I think it's my job as an elected MP to help and to serve everybody. There's one footpath that is frequently used by residents there to access to Upper Sengu, where the bus stops is. Footpath is very muddy and building raining there and all that. So I wanted to construct a proper footpath for the residents. But part of it was on state land. So asking them, they say, on state land and all that on development, but for donkey years, there was no development. So I challenged them in parliament and all that. At the end, they approved, but someone have to apply for TOP, temporary occupation permit, from the government, from HDB. And then, because you're on state land, you cannot use town council fund. So, okay, I mean, at the end of the day, I apply for TOP. I pay for TOP, is okay. I mean, it's a yearly affair that I pay every year. and then try to help my friends and all that to build the footpath. So resident jokingly, you should name the footpath Low Thia Khiang footpath. I said, never mind. Anyway, you walk, you know, you know what happened. Because they've been requesting for many times, and it was a challenge. It's a simple footpath.
I think Mr. Low Thia Khiang has set a very high benchmark as an MP. A benchmark not just in integrity, honesty, but in the passion that he exhibits in serving the people of Hougang, He's always on the ground, so I learned a lot from him. He's always on the ground, and he has a good sense of whether the estate is well kept or not. And the important thing is he also came back and do the follow-up. I don't just report, hey, this place leaking. Mr. Low and myself, we will follow up. We say, hey, we solve this, any other issue, So it's a very personal thing. So the relationship between MP and resident in Hougang is just like a very personal relationship.
So I think, you see, Hougang resident is very devoted. They don't care about promise. Whether you promise 100 million, it's just empty promise. You want to see the work done.
When I was in the Hougang constituency committee, when we finished the meeting in the middle, I won't say middle of the night, but usually it's quite late, about 11. One of the Mr. Lau's assistant will follow him to the funeral at the wake. Then we'll ask him, hey, it's very late already, so why don't go back and rest, But he will say that, firstly, people might need help at home. You never know what is the situation. And then the second point, he said that actually this is a good time to visit them, because that funeral, usually people will come during the peak hours, 7 to 10 o'clock. You never have a chance to speak to the family, it's touch and go. But at the point of time, when it's quiet, when you have the time, people might tell you more. And if let's say they have issues, they can relate to you.
Attending wake wasn't my intention as part of the activity. It wasn't. What happened was, because I used to walk around the estate, looking at the estate and all that, then I do come across people who are holding wake at the void deck. So I just go in, pay the respect. And the family member usually say, sit down, have a drink and have a chat and all that. And from there, then I realized, actually, even the wake can be problem to some residents, because either their finances or some of them, because, after their main breadwinner pass on, financially, they need support. So I thought it would be useful to attend and to understand their problem, and also at the same time, pay my respect to my constituent. So I thought it was meaningful to do that. So accidentally, I started that. And from there, I carry on. I find it meaningful, to do this.
A good MP must be like, he must know the difficulties. Even if he cannot help us, no worries. It's just like, sometimes we just need someone to hear us, whether you can do it or you cannot do it as a resident. Like for me, as a resident of Hougang, even if I try to tell you I got this problem, but you cannot help me, is beyond your duty. It's okay. I don't need my MP to promise me a lot of things. No. As long as it's easy, he is approachable, easy for me to talk to him, it will be very good.
Honestly, you look at MP, you say, well, high and mighty, right? Right. These guys are leaders of Singapore. They are MPs. But for the three generations, you can see that the ego is actually subsumed by the fact that they need to serve. Mr. Lau and Mr. Peng, to be honest, continue to be very popular among the residents here. Right? If you go to any events where Mr. Lau and Mr. Peng show up with tenants, you could see that the residents talk to them as friends, as peers. Right? I think that is something that is, to be honest, very dear to me as well. To be able to actually talk to residents and for them to be open enough to tell us how we can help them. and for us to actually go in and help them.
I think in the Hougang case, I think it must come down to personal, ground-level grassroots relationships. And I think having trust in a leadership that represents people, the leader who understands the people, who actually represents them and connects with them. And I think there has been, the PRP has had some problems parachuting in leaders into certain places who just aren't able to connect with that generation and who they are. And I think the trust builds up, and I think, as I said, a confidence emerges that you can actually vote opposition, still be Singaporean, you can still live there, you know, you can still, you know, I think what's happened also, I'll be honest, the Workers' Party has changed.
So it's sad to say this, but before the 2000s, I think there was this perception in Singapore that opposition politicians are like clowns, or they are like out to ruin Singapore, you know, or they are opportunists and they're just in it for a quick buck or something like that. Don't really care about the long-term interests of Singaporeans. And I think Mr. Lau's continued success over the years went a long way towards convincing Singaporeans that opposition politicians can be responsible, can have their best interests at heart, can take the time to build slowly, you know, build a political platform over years and not be opportunistic in terms of how they want to go about things. And I think it's to his credit that he's done so much to improve the perception or misconception, because a lot of the perceptions are fed by the mainstream media, but he has done a lot to change the perception of opposition politicians in Singapore.
拍纪录片，然后我是拍空镜。哦。因为我们在做一个后港的纪录片。谢谢。
My very first impression of Hougang when I first moved in about 6 years ago was the fact that the kampong spirit is actually very strong here. When you walk the shops along Avenue 5 and Avenue 8, you can see that people are very close to each other, right? People actually speak a lot to each other. People know each other. People wave and say hello. And that is something that I really like about Hougang.
Keep talking about the kampong spirit, then you experience it firsthand. You know, you can see people congregating at the void deck. You know, not just talking, chatting, you know, they share food, they do a lot of things. They help each other to buy stuff, you know, it's really kampong. I mean, the more able one will be doing the walking, I buy for you this, I buy for you that, you know. The elderly will just wait. So the whole thing just unreal. You don't get to see it anywhere except maybe in the old days. Back when I grew up in Tanjong Pagar, we do see that, we help each other, but after moving to HDB, you don't see anymore. But in Hougang, you still see a lot of those.
You will learn that there is a lot of warmth in the Hougang people who have been living here for a long time. You can see that Hougang, they call it the Hougang spirit. Actually, it's that kampong spirit that came with them when they were resettled in Hougang. I know that in Hougang, I can just plonk myself down in a coffee shop, sit down next to a resident, have a coffee and have a nice yabber with them. And especially when you sit down with groups of residents who know each other for a long time, they are good friends, good neighbors, and they are having a go at each other, you know, making fun of each other, and I sit down making fun of me, and we all have fun just sitting down, relaxing and having a good chat, and that is very uniquely Hougang.
So this row of shop houses are still here. The convenience stores are still the same. I can see Nam Ho, and that's where my mum would say, "Hey, look at Nam Ho, then I'll run over here and buy things from there." Actually, I wonder if Mr. Nampo is still in there. I'll probably recognize him, he's still around. And then here is where the market and the hawker center used to be. This is where everything was, and I don't recognize it at all now. Yeah, it's completely gone. So the basketball court's still there. It looks a lot nicer now. I remember I had an art competition around there. And then these are where the provision shops are. And in front of it was another row of shop houses that's low rising. And then in front would have been the market and the hawker center. And this is what it is now. I'm glad the provision shop's still around because it looks like it's the only childhood remnant I have of this place. Yeah. I think it's bittersweet, right? There's that part of the old that you miss and you crave for. And at the same time, you sort of understand what has happened and this is how we live now. Yeah. It's always a struggle, isn't it? So the market itself, I remember just every Sunday morning, before my siblings woke up, without anybody waking up, I would go to the market and queue for the chai tao kueh. And I had to go early so that I can tapao, bring home, and watch my cartoons every Sunday. The one that I grew up with mostly was the white chai tao kueh. And it was run by this family, a husband, wife, and 2 young kids. And sadly, the husband passed away further on, and the wife took over. And when the market was closed down, thankfully, they were relocated nearby to Hougang Avenue 5 at Block 327.
Oh, 这个就是那个巴萨的照片，哇 ，surprise 的，你们还有这些照片，因为以前呢没有这么发达，没有手机拍，这个是玫瑰季，后面的水果摊，
还玫瑰季，玫瑰你玫瑰，
也是想念他们了很久了，因为那边以前坦白讲，在巴萨的档口的这些摊贩啊，都很亲切感的。 以前这个巴萨啊，礼拜天啊，哇，人潮很多。
真的，以前我在巴萨，我们六个人做嘞。
看到这些照片呢，想起以前的时候，全部很多人都认识在照片里面。真的，他们都看我从小到现在。
现在他们还讲了，你没有变的嘞，我从小你在巴萨这么小，看到现在也是一样。
你们有那个落地处搬迁的时候，你们的感觉是什么？
当然是有点。 舍不得啦，
舍不得啦，
因为这个东西啊，已经传了很久了，很多年了。
我老公在的时候，每个人说这个巴萨要赶了。我老公在的时候就讲，
就是讲了，连他就收到那封信的时候，我们有说 meeting 跟 NEA meeting 啦，就是说可以延迟一下吧。他讲这个是 final decision 是没有办法的。没有办法的。
Shutting down the market was a very emotional moment for me because the market is my lifeline. I love food, you know, and everything I ate came from the market. Not just food that was cooked, but also my mom would go to the wet market. So everything that I ate really literally came from the market that we cook or that we bought from the hawkers, you know. So we were really upset because we didn't understand why this was the heart of the community and that was being taken away. And it wasn't that another one was replaced, they were just all scattered, you know, yeah. So I think that was, to me personally, was heartbreaking.
It was, to me, a sad occasion because the old market there was actually a gathering point for many people who lived around in Hougang area. And also an area which I used to frequent to have drinks with residents, to have a chat. Many of the residents who are the hawkers and all that are all Hougang residents. And the market, I believe, was a very old market and there were a lot of memories left. So when the government decided to, to demolish it, was a sad moment for a lot of people. But they do it in the name of redevelopment. The question, of course, is why you need to choose that market for redevelopment and not other market. Something which I'm puzzled.
I think I shared this story before. One resident told me that, I think one of the PAP people campaigning there said, hey, vote for us, we'll bring back the market. I think the lady replied was, no, you don't need to bring back the market. You owe us a market. Give us back the market. That's all we want. That's how important the market is to the resident. It's a perfectly good market. It's just that's all. So these are the things that people don't understand. The resident of Hougang don't understand why you need to take it away. You can just upgrade easily. So far, I don't know how many hawker center or market have they taken away from old estate. I mean, you look at Red Hill, the market is still there. Look at Henderson, still there. Jin Shui Road, still there. What's so different about Hougang?
This is the government works. They want to tear off. It's their will to do. We cannot do anything.
每个人都呱呱叫啊，东西那边卖东西又便宜耶，全部老人住那边，要吃东西啊什么，煮下来就 OK。每个你看那个老安迪啊什么，哎呀有翻新也好，没有翻新也好嘞，是这样住，不会漏水就好了啊讲。这边的老人啊，比较有志气啊，慢慢爬咯，讲不要紧嘛。本来是没有电梯啊，没有爬几十年了讲，还好啊，还可以 exercise 啊，还有脚还有力。
Frankly speaking, my first house is on the second floor, no problem. Second and third house is on the fourth floor, all walk up. And there's no lift. Only after I shifted, then the lift upgrading was start. And that was when I'm heavily pregnant, I'm with kids, with stroller, carry up and down, groceries, and I'm the kind of person that I don't wait for my husband because last time he used to work shift. It's not about opposition, it's not about the ruling party, no. It's the rights, our rights as a citizen. Because I pay tax, The
Hougang residents, they early days when they said, lift upgrading will come last and all that, they took in their stride, I mean, I've seen personally old folks carrying the bicycle up using the stairs. Not easy, But they just like that, they said, yeah, if no lift, then I walk, No shelter, never mind, I walk in the rain, Those were the early days, before they aged. But I think once they aged, I think ultimately the lift came and they all very happy anyway. The Hougang residents, they really enjoy and they think that it's the right thing to do. It's nothing political, it's the right thing to do because you design flat in such a way in the past and it doesn't cater for an aging population, you have to address it.
Sometimes I feel like, it's not being fair to Hougang residents. It seems I'm shortchanging them. They elected me, and that's how the government is, penalize them for electing me. I felt that I stopped changing them. I feel very uncomfortable and I find there's something that, so I think after moving out, the fact is that the facilities are upgraded. So I think that's the most satisfying part of serving Hougang. At least at the end of the day, they got what they're supposed to have. Although delayed and late but late is better than none.
Every election we think, is the opposition going to win this round? And then it wins again, each time. And, there's always that wonder whether it's going to happen because, the market was taken away. And after that, the buses were taken away. Again, I said rightly or wrongly attributed to the opposition winning a seat. But the ground feeling was that we're being punished. So you always wonder, at some point people will say, I need the upgrade. Maybe we should, vote a different party for a change and see what happens. But interestingly, each time the opposition wins. And I think that speaks about a certain sort of community spirit that believe in the opposition somehow, right? Whether it was the realism of needing somebody who listened to their concerns on the ground, or whether it was a more idealistic democracy that we need an alternative voice. Whatever the reason was, there was a unity in that sense, yeah.
I think when they demolished the market, beyond the whole thing affected also a number of residents living in the rental block, the needy residents. So in Hougang, a lot of the rental block residents who are on welfare, I mean, they spoke to us. They were worried that once they got relocated, they don't know where to find food, where to get help. So in Hougang, what we did was we worked with the VWOs and we told them that whoever get relocated can come back to Hougang. They can come back for as long as they want, until such time that they can find their own welfare source in the new place, and then they can stop. So we allow that. So a lot of residents were very happy, and I think the first few months, a lot of the residents who moved out came back. People in Hougang, those old residents of Hougang, felt about the place. They have a very strong attachment to it. And even until today, there are people who moved out of Hougang, but they still come back to Hougang almost every day. Because the friends are here. Everything is here. They are so familiar with the place. It's just like the attachment is just beyond just a normal, resident. There's an emotional attachment to Hougang. I guess Hougang, you want to win Hougang, you must win with your heart, not with your mind, not with goodies, not with promise of upgrading. It must be with your heart. So I think they see in Low Thia Khiang, and they see in the subsequent MPs that we really serve with our heart. With nothing. I don't expect anything in return.
From what I gather from stories amongst families that live there to the day, to asking their parents about why this became a Workers' Party stronghold, it was that loss of trust, and then having a leader like Mr Low, who actually connected with that working class population, who were resentful of what had been done to them. And there are various stories about, various generalizations that Teochew people will hold these grudges if they feel wronged. And it doesn't matter how you try to buy them out, how many lift upgrades or whatever you offer, you've broken that trust. And I think what happens after 91 is it's all very well to have a protest vote. There's many times there's a protest vote and people will go the other way out of anger with the ruling party. But what happens is some connection is formed and it functions. That's the real telling. Not necessarily the 91 election, but what happens afterwards is a really important moment in modern Singapore political history.
You don't need opposition to win. No, we don't need it. But at least our voices are heard. Even though it will take like 10 years, 20 years, but at least there's something that is heard over there, whether they want to consider, they don't want to consider, up to them. So I think that's one of the reasons why they say Hougang is the place where it starts.
Hougang as a bastion of democracy is, like I say, overstated, right? But we need something to look to. We need something to guide us. We need something to actually provide that kind of a light tower, light house of sorts to go towards, right? And I'm sure people look to Hougang for that, right? How to actually be a successful opposition ward, to kind of showcase what can be done. Yeah. But again, to repeat the point, I think that plurality of voices is really very important, right? And it gets more and more so as Singapore modernizes, as Singapore goes through the different generations that we have.
And I think that persistence of the voters in Hougang to keep delivering the Workers' Party to power basically showed us also that, hey, maybe there are other things in life that matter. Singaporeans can't be so easily bought off by bribing us about lift upgrading or by throwing this goodie or throwing that goodie. There are other things like democratic values or discourse or debate or just wanting alternative opinions and views that we actually care about. And I think that showed a lot of Singapore that, hey, hang on, there are other ways to live life. So the impact of the Hougang voter on the Singaporean psyche, I think, cannot be underestimated. It's quite amazing.
Okay, beside my service to Hougang, and also maybe perhaps they like me, I think there is something else that is to do with the character of people in Hougang and also the spirit of Hougang. The spirit of Hougang, it's just, you just have to, you know, 拍死搏走啦. I mean, just do it lah. And so I think the fairness and justice is in the heart of everybody. Right? And Mandarin say, 公道自在人心. There's always a yardstick in everybody's heart. What is fairness? What is justice?
Thank you. Take care, ma'am. All the best. Take care. See you. Huh? Okay? Hi, sir. Congratulations. Peace bump.
Today, it's the annual presentation of our Hougang Constituency Education Trust bursaries for the less privileged families in Hougang. And since then, every year, the trust as a charity have been raising funds to assist such families. And today, we are very happy to have our annual presentation again. And we thank all our donors for their generous donations, and we hope that we can continue to serve our residents in the same way for many years to come. I think over the years, when we give the bursaries to students from primary school, then secondary school, going up to post-secondary, tertiary, and some of these students have come back after they started work to give some donations. And that really is a testimony of not just their gratitude for the little help they receive, but also the recognition that such little help is important to many of our residents.
The community club used to give out bursaries every year to residents and those people who need it. When I was elected, they decided to discontinue. And I say, okay, but I can't let down people that way. So I gather some people who are there and some, some residents and all that. So we started an education trust. Then we try to get, try to raise funds to, 7 months. And there are some friends who donate and all that, and to give out bursaries. That's how the Hougang Education Trust came about.
I think it's a very teacher thing, or ex-teacher thing, You see education as a very important aspect of building the next generation, right? So when I first joined, HCET was really top of my mind. I want to make sure that it continue to run, and make sure that donation comes in, make sure that we give up to needy students, help as many students as we can.
I think I was actually quite amazed when Low Thia Khiang brought up introduced the Education Trust to me when I became an MP and I took over. I'm amazed because it's like a private trust, and it's totally sponsored by events in Hougang, the 7 month. They raise money through the 7 month by auctioning a HCET plug. And the organizer would be very generous. Sometimes they auction the same plug twice, 3 times in a night so that you can raise more money. And all proceeds will go to the trust. So I'm amazed that they managed to keep this private trust alive for so long, since 1992. And what's interesting about the trust is that there are people who are beneficiary, and then later, years later, when they no longer need it, they donated back to the trust.
When I was volunteering for the Hougang Educational Trust, right, I met one of the bursary applicants, and then the parents used to actually have a stall in the market. And that was the year that they were being told that the market was going to be torn down. Okay, because hawkers no CPF, MediSave, you got to pay for yourself. And she knows that the store is closing down and they are going to run into financial issues. So she applied for the Hougang Constituency Education Trust. So at that point of time, we went to interview her and then asking her the family situation. That's how we got to find out that the elderly, they are going to have no more store, no more income and things like that. We say, okay, we'll need to go back and assess the case, but we'll let you know very soon. But she actually told us that, oh, actually, maybe I don't need this anymore because I've applied for a scholarship. And this scholarship is actually a teacher's, she's going to be trained to be a teacher in the future under MOE. And then they actually supports her throughout her whole education in NIE. So she said that, oh, I'll give up this chance to others who needs it more than me.
I think the Hougang residents are very big-hearted, right? There are many residents that are very big-hearted there. And many of the donors, to be honest, aren't your rich businessmen, they aren't your multi-millionaires, right? But they are actually willing to come out with a portion of their wealth to say that, yeah, this is worth doing, right? Because this is something that we want to give to our next generation. Like I mentioned, even during the COVID times, the donation did not stop. People were still going to dentists and say, I have a check for you, I have cash donation for you.
And sometimes they have a windfall, they'll donate to the education trust. They'll donate to the education trust. 1 year after I came in during the election, right? I mean, after the election result, it was I don't know, is it what festival? They want us to light up the park to celebrate. I said we got no budget. You know, it's not cheap, you know, to light up the park, the neighborhood park, the Avenue 5. One resident donated the money for the town council to do the light up. Can you imagine? Just to have that atmosphere. So these are the interesting things. They're willing to not just use their mouth to help, use their vote. They're willing to use their hands and their money.
Because I think the Hougang resident has been like, they want the sincerity from whoever is going to rule Hougang. We want to see the sincerity. We don't want to see the fakeness in like, okay, I give you this, so you must vote for me. I got eyes to see. I grow up in Singapore, so I know which is correct, which is wrong, and we are not small kid that you give a lollipop and I just keep quiet. Okay, I'm contented already, so okay, can.
Okay, I think the people of Hougang believe in the justice, equality, and they know that they have seen in the early days when Low Thia Khiang became MP how difficult it was for him to run the town. So they felt this is not right now, you know. So they want to have that sense of equality. They believe in democracy in its purest form, means everybody is equal. I don't know, maybe it's also part of the kampong spirit. They want someone of their own. They felt like, oh, Low Thia Khiang is like, Low Thia Khiang grew in Hougang, you know. So I think so. I think that's where it all started. To hear a candidate speak in Teochew, something that can connect with them.
I think that they are. The Hougang people, if they know you as Kakinang, you are already part of who they are. And so it would have been better to keep their own Kakinang in charge of themselves rather than have someone else who didn't know them and might not champion their interests coming in.
So the other interesting thing about 2006 is that by that point in time, Hougang had actually been with the Workers' Party and Low Thia Khiang for 15 years, right? He first won the seat in 1991. So it was this period of sustained winning, which has actually carried on till today. So if you think today in 2022, the Hougang district has actually been with the opposition for 31 years. You know, before that, it was with the PAP for 26 years. So if you think about it, the people in Hougang have actually been living for quite a few years longer under the opposition than the PAP, which is quite an incredible statistic for Singapore.
So initially, I have always wondered, because I used to watch elections and I'd hear this roar from the coffee shops. of Hougang, and there was always this eruption of resistance. So I used to think it must be a really stubborn, something must have gone wrong for the PAP there. There's a lot of bad feeling. They must have been treated badly. And I think there's a resilience. I think there were problems for Hougang residents in voting for the Workers' Party. But that can create a very strong cohesion. I mean, people who are not frightened or the Blitz kind of spirit, they come together because of those challenges, and it shapes it. And I do think in a context where a lot has been done in Singapore to break down local identities, like we were talking about all the development projects, the housing of people, the resettlement, constantly breaking down local identities and replacing them with state-led identities. I think the act of voting opposition creates, and then deciding to live in an opposition ward, I think that creates its own momentum, creates an identity.
因为多数的人喺度嘅後港區嘅人啊，古早攏徛喺啲山頂嘅，所以因人啊有一種，咱講你對伊好，伊有感情啊，所以啊因人啊對後港區嘅人民啊，大家啊係真正滿意。
這個就是後港人嘅後港嘅精神啊。後港嘅精神，後港選民嘅團結嘅力量，所以PAP 唔敢看輕後港人。後港人若是無這款嘅團結嘅心來講啊，PAP 無看你嘅面啊。
The spirit is there. When you come to election, you see, wow, got a coffee shop here. You can see gathering down there. No other constituency they have this type of spirit. From the west, from east or where, they'll come down or drive all the way here to see the spirit.
Hougang spirit is about Singapore because we dare to stake the claim that we dare to send an opposition into the parliament, not for Hougang, but for the country.
To me, the Hougang spirit is the identification of these ties that bind people together. And these ties that bind are the common shared experiences and traditions of the people in a place. So the Hougang spirit is produced by shared memory, shared experiences, and shared heritage coming out of a people within a specific historical context at a specific geographical location.
I think the Hougang spirit comes about through a political act of voting against the PAP, voting for the Workers' Party. But then something happens after that. People come together, facing challenges, having made this decision. I think it reflects a degree of courage to vote again. It's not simply a protest vote. I think that having voted for the opposition, it becomes reflective of the identity of the place. It's a way people identify that particular ward, that particular part of Singapore. People have a consciousness of belonging to something that is outside the state-building project, and yet also fulfilling the needs of the people. It's doing it separately from the PAP. And ultimately, I think that is the Hougang spirit. It's a way of being Singaporean without being pro-People's Action Party.
It's the same with the Michelin Guide, right? You don't always get the star, so you are on your toes. You want to work hard to get it. But if you always will get the star regardless of what you do, then you won't work hard for it.
And I think that long stretch of continuously voting opposition has had a tremendous impact on the rest of Singapore, because Singaporeans now see Hougang as a place where you can choose a different way of living, you can choose a different political party, and you can still live a happy, successful life. And I think this has gone a long way towards changing the perception in the rest of Singapore about what's possible, about what kind of politics is doable on a day-to-day basis, and the kinds of choices that we might have when we actually go to the ballot box. So I think the impact of Hougang on the imagination of the rest of Singaporeans has been dramatic.
Time flies. That's life. But for 30 years, I think Hougang makes Singapore a different Singapore with the support of the Workers' Party. We have made good progress in terms of our political system, in terms of how to make the government more responsive, in terms of making progress in democracy. Without Houggang's support over the years, the Workers' Party will not be able to develop to what it is today, to organize itself, to build a foundation, and to thereby offer a wider service to Singapore, and hopefully will, change the political landscape to institutionalize our political system of checks and balance. And I think with the new appointment of the leader of opposition is a testimony of the progress we have made. And that I think Singaporeans remember Hougang.
Okay, done. Okay.
Great.
Yeah.